So it's the start of the bull market, but you could get caught out if you think this is going to keep going up forever. In this video, we're going to look at the previous cycles in terms of duration of length of the bull market. This bit is kind of important. We are also going to go through my plan, what I'm going to do in this cycle, and it may actually catch a few of you out when I do it. However, we need to know something. Is this time actually different to the previous cycles? Funny thing is though, we are around 50 days away from Bitcoin halving as the time of this video, but we are literally within a nad's bollock of all-time high. That is where the difference is. So let's get on the screen, look at some data, and obviously outline my plan. I don't want to scare you too much. But before we do that, please, if you do, like this video, and if you're new, subscribe. It means an awful lot. So on the screen, we have something very, very simple. It is basically the random durations of the bull and the bear market and the accumulation levels of a previous cycle. We're going to look at how hot and how close the previous bull cycles have been and also bear markets, because I think that's important. Now, what the rules are, and everyone's got different rules. I like to do it from structure break. So if we go and zoom in, this is me thinking, well, structure broke from these lows in 2015. We broke above this level, but for me, I think it's too precarious to kind of go from November of 2015. But I've gone from this breakout here in terms of this region. So this is kind of the break of like into the bull cycle. Off we go, right? Now, this was a 609 duration day, and I'm using the total market cap here. We also had a failure, and this is where the failure kind of happened. Another structure break where we're going into a bear market, right? This was about 322 days. Okay, keep in mind those numbers. We also had a random long accumulation. Now, this was where it got a bit odd. We had a certain thing going on in the market. Don't want to say it too loudly, but we had a decent accumulation and we kind of didn't do much. We didn't really break structure. Nothing really got crazy until we hit this point here where we broke above this level and then off we went. So when we talk about this region, this is kind of where this break of structure kind of happened. You could probably argue a little bit later on, but we're talking roughly June, July 2020 where we went into the bull cycle. Bitcoin halving, by the way, was around here. Just saying, right? So we could probably look at this sort of region here as terms of where this kind of went. So up to you how you want to view it as, but for me, you're probably looking at roughly, you can probably argue even October in terms of where the bull market really got going, right? So I'm more than happy to talk about that there, which kind of makes more sense, right? However, when we look at where this was roughly a 427-day bull market. Talk about diminishing returns, diminishing cycles as well in the past. This is kind of true in its word. In terms of its rejection, had a massive monster run down, then pull back up. Again, we talk about this kind of, lower high. Not fun, but that's where the bear market started, bull market ended. Yeah, right? Now, when we go back and we look, accumulation cycle of Bitcoin and the whole market, then off we go. Again, we're talking a break of structure around this kind of level here, where we're broken above. And this is kind of where it all started, right? So this is where we are. We are currently roughly, how many days? I'll soon tell you. Bear with me. We are currently 126 days technically into this bullish market, right? That's fine. Now, previous markets, as I've alluded to, roughly 427. And again, previous cycle here, 600 and whatever, right? Give or take. Now, in reality here, if we're going to look at, say, roughly just say about 400. 413, 420 is roughly taking us towards the end of this year. That isn't a bad shout. And I've talked a lot about the end of this year going into 2025 being potentially the cook season where it's cooked and it's gone. The reason why I say that is because previous cycles are very, very explosive. A lot of leverage comes to the market, a lot of idiots come, things blow up and things go a bit awry. However, I have talked about the fact that this time is a little bit different, right? So when we talk about that, keep an eye on, in my opinion here, the end of this year. 2025 isn't a bad shout. That would indicate from the breaker structure and going through the same rules, a bull cycle in terms of a bullish phase of a cycle. Remember, there is a number of phases in a bullish and a bearish cycle, right? And if we are going to follow this to a T, you could probably argue. Now, one thing that is very, very interesting here, we are seem to be getting similar sort of bear markets where we're getting longer bearish markets and obviously longer kind of phases of bulls into a more lesser phase essentially. And yeah, we might well be getting smaller bull markets, a longer accumulation sort of vibe, or smaller bull markets, longer bear markets potentially, right? But there's a lot of other things to talk about, right? The big thing here that is different, in my opinion anyways, is the fact that we are very, very close to the all-time high of Bitcoin right before halving. Not even close to halving yet. Realistically, we're like weeks away. Mental. So, in the past, we got to look at what happened. This is interesting. First halving, price at halving, $13 a year later, right? What we've often found within halving is post-halving, we often drop quite significantly or before it. Tends to be a bit of a sell-off, right? Again, going into halving 2 here. 600, a year later, 17,000, right? Again, halving 3, 9,000 at the price of halving, up to roughly, it's near its all-time high. 1 year later from halving is a really big thing, which could be interesting, right? Whether it's going to be much, much higher, probably, or if it's going to be considerably higher, which could be also another factor as well. So going back to this, if we're looking 1 year from halving, we are looking at roughly, what, April, March time, which isn't that far away from what I've been talking about. That's just moving the thing. That's rather annoying. I want to move this. Apologies. There we go. So if we are looking at roughly these sort of dates here, you're talking roughly 450 to 500 days anyways. Not that far away for a point where you could be thinking to yourself, well, what is the price going to be? But I might well change your whole perspective here because all of this, I know, it might be getting thrown out the window. And I'll come on to that in a second, just bear with me. Before I do go on to some more craziness, right, I want to talk about something simple. We have got some very, very big dynamics to play here. And you can see here on the screen, the predictions. This is funny. Some of these predictions are mental, by the way. And I personally, I don't mind predictions, but at the same time, though, they're very wishy-washy. The thing we've got is, and we've got to talk about this, this is massive, right? This is a totally different dynamic to the market. And again, I've been in the market for a while and this is new. This is totally new to me, the ETF narrative. It's massive. But what has happened, and I alluded to it before, prior to halving, miners tend to sell. They tend to protect themselves because their whole revenue, and I've said this before, is literally halving. It's crazy, right? When you think about the inflows and the outflows of all the mining algorithms will change and it'll just go whoom, half, right? That's fine. Problem is, they sometimes dump. The problem we do have to make note of is OTC, over-the-counter desks. Their demand is through the roof and the availability of said Bitcoin is drastically on the floor. What does that mean? Well, it means a bit of a supply shock. It means that price may well go up, which may well lead to something in a second, which I will talk about in terms of cycles, right? The problem we have is there's potentially only 40 available on Wednesday. That was last week. 40 Bitcoin. I'm not going to tell you how much money I've got in the market, but I'm not that far away from that number, right? In the grand scheme of things, if I was to sell all my altcoins, that's quite scary, right? When we talk about this is going to be where I go with the plan. Now, before I go anywhere, I want to just kind of shill this. This is my company, Learning Crypto. If you want more videos from me, more educational stuff around trading, give it a follow, right? Check it out. But the final thing that I need to talk about before I go on to my plan, what if it's a left translated cycle? So basically this would mean that the peak has occurred prior to the halfway point. We are very much way above that point. Realistically, we are. We're nearly at all-time high of Bitcoin. We're very, very early into the cycle. It may well just go absolutely flying and then come crashing down to earth, which is where I need to kind of segue onto my plan, because I think this is where you need to probably pin your ears back and understand psychological factors here in your brain of taking profit, because this is a thing. You might make a lot of money very quickly in this environment, in this situation, right? So a visual representation of Bitcoin. It's kind of simple. It's parabolic. It is getting very much hopium, hype, parabolic. It's cool, right? Problem is, when do you and why do you take profit? Now, I'm going to say something that probably everyone might have heard. No one goes broke taking profits. However, if you have a magical number in your head, nothing wrong with taking it, right? This is the thing. Stated at the start of the entire video. Everyone will think eventually that this will keep going up forever. Trust me, there'll be wobbles along the way. It will be brutal in certain parts. There will be rug pulls. There will be things that will go wrong. A lot of the clowns will come back and they might well ruin you, right? Now, I've said this on my Patreon. I've said it on my Twitter. My portfolio balance right now is nearly double what it was in 2021, right? That kind of scares me because personally, we're early. The market hasn't really kicked off yet. Most of my holdings are way from all-time high. They are, right? So this is my plan. My plan is going to be about Bitcoin dominance and waiting for this to hit the floor, basically. However, it may not fully hit the floor. I may well chicken out a little bit and sell a bit too early. My plan is to remove my altcoin positions when the time is right into Bitcoin and manage that. The reason why, if this dominance does drop and I can then cash in my Satoshi levels into obviously Bitcoin and manage that, it's much easier. Then I can then sell that when it's high into dollars and just manage that. Simple, right? By the way, comment if you want me to do a full-on video about how this really works, because I think a lot of people still asking questions and want answers, which makes sense. But my plan is to hopefully over time, stuff like this is all worth a hell of a lot more. Near protocol over 10,000, for example. Link might be worth, I don't know, 13,000. They might put an extra one there. You just don't know, right? And that would indicate that the price has gone up in both Bitcoin pair and obviously USD because, you know, Bitcoin's still doing well. Now, if that means that Bitcoin then eventually becomes 100,000, 200,000, whatever price levels, I've got a shit ton of Bitcoin that I'm sitting on and I can sell that into whatever hell I want and live happily ever after, essentially, right? So my plan is simple. I will take profit when I've made too much money. And I know that's going to sound absolutely crazy, but why would you leave money on the table? You might, and I've said it before, make a crap ton of money very, very quickly. I've seen it before in my Patreon. I've seen it before in Learning Crypto. I've seen it before in my own portfolio where people will turn, say, $10,000, $20,000 into freaking $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 very, very quickly. Either take profit and run, smart people, or let it rot and round trip it. Do not mess it up by thinking and getting caught up in the hype of it's going to go up forever, because the duration of the cycles, we have a rough idea. It's a rough idea though. It's not perfect. But if we're looking at October, November, December of the end of this year, and you've made a bucket ton of money and you've not taken any profit, you need to give yourself a hard shake and make sure you do, because you only get a couple of times in life to make life-changing money. Crypto, weirdly, enables that if you know what the hell you're doing. But that psychological chimp in your brain telling you it's going to go up forever, this time is different. Yeah, cool. Be exposed, but take something off the table. Take money out because you may not do it in time, right? So, I hope you enjoy. I hope this helps you. But if my money goes up to a certain point, I will be moving it into Bitcoin, especially if that Bitcoin dominance is low. But we shall see where we go with it. So there we go. Hope you enjoy. There's a video floating around my head in a second, what you should be watching. It's probably going to be the most important video you'll watch, so make sure you do watch it. If you've not watched it, do it.